Poise, structure, discipline. Poise, structure, discipline. This has been the recipe for my achievements. All right, really, not intentionally, but looking back through the years, there's definitely been a pattern and a method to the way I've gone about achieving my goals. So, when I was younger, I loved classical ballet, and I committed to it completely through elementary school up through high school. And poise and discipline are inherent in classical ballet. And if I ever forgot that, I had a very large Russian ballet teacher who would come along, thump me in the stomach, remind me to pull in my gut, stand up straight, and exhibit that graceful poise. Well, I applied that same methodology to my academics. I was pretty smart, so I didn't see any sense in wasting a natural talent. And I couldn't see the point of doing something unless I chose to be the very best. So with the discipline of a ballet dancer, I learned. I found comfort in the structure of following a formula and coming up with an answer. Read the book, learn the material, study for the test, get good results. Structure, discipline. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a good time. I had friends, I enjoyed school, but I definitely had priorities set from an early age. So to that end, I end up valedictorian of my class. Accepted to Duke University, I received a full ride scholarship with Navy ROTC, and I'm going to be commissioned as a naval officer upon graduation. Now, the Navy piece wasn't a big stretch. I actually came from a Navy family, and for me, that was actually a comfortable choice. That was a career direction and a career field that pretty much provided you a structure and a rule book for how to succeed. So that was an easy choice. But again, I don't like to do anything unless I try to be the very best. So after 4 years of school, I end up the top female midshipman in my class in academics, in military bearing, and in physical fitness. Structure, discipline. It worked for me. And I thrived. So I graduate from college. I am commissioned as a naval intelligence officer. So my first duty station is to a P3 squadron in Hawaii. So I'm going to be the only female officer in a wardroom of 60 male aviators. Now, this was the early 90s, so although women served, we didn't serve in combat roles. So not only am I going to be the only female officer in the room, but the only intelligence officer and a redhead to boot. So there is no blending into the crowd. And my goal is to conform, right? To be part of the team. But just my mere presence in the room was unique, so there was no blending in. So what do you do in a scenario like that? Revert to that old adage. Poise, structure, discipline. What does that look like in the Navy? Well, number one, you start with a sharp-looking uniform. Picture those crisp summer whites. You guys have seen them. Tom Cruise wore them in Top Gun. My version just had a skirt and heels. So that crisp summer white uniform with the perfect military creases, all my ribbons and insignia on right down to the letter, like a 1/4 inch measured with a ruler. So that perfect uniform, but I'm still nervous, right? I'm brand new. I'm going to be the only skirt and heels in the room. So step 2, hold your head up high, walk to the front of that briefing room with a confidence you absolutely do not feel. But they can't know that. They have to trust what you say. So they don't know that you maybe woke up with cramps that morning, or that it took 3 pairs of pantyhose to find one without a run in it, or that even putting on a pair of pantyhose in the Hawaiian heat could ruin your morning. All they needed to do was trust what I say. So exhibit that graceful poise, whether you feel it or not. Fake it till you make it. And it worked. It worked. I was, by all measures, an outstanding naval officer. But eventually, the time came for me to leave the Navy and start raising a family. My husband, well, I've said that I don't like to do anything half-heartedly, and I didn't want to split my time between raising a family and my military service. So my husband and I made the decision that I would get out and be a stay-at-home mom. My own mother was a stay-at-home mom and a Navy spouse, so I had that role modeled for me. And it was something I could totally picture doing, and I embraced. Along with being a committed mother, I was also a supportive naval spouse. So what is that? Well, we were often left on our own for months at a time, and we had to rely on each other for that kind of support. And the longer you were a naval or a military spouse, the more those other spouses came to rely on you as that source of strength. We were friends, confidants, therapists, babysitters, CPAs, handymen, you name it. And from that comes the natural inclination to volunteer anytime you saw a need. So now, not only am I a parent or a stay-at-home mom, I'm a supportive naval spouse, and I'm a serial volunteer. So I volunteered in more organizations than I can count through those years, from PTAs to Little Leagues to one of my favorites was a civic leadership organization in our last duty station in Virginia. And because I don't do anything halfway, I rocked it. I was a fantastic mom, a fantastic support, military support wife, and a serial volunteer. Sounds fantastic, doesn't it? It was. It was absolutely fantastic, and I am proud of everything that I did. So where's the but? Where's the crisis? I don't really have a crisis. I don't have some tangible crisis for us to sit here and reflect upon. But what I do have is a running conversation in my head for years that sowed a seed of doubt to every single one of my accomplishments along the way. Not because anyone critiqued my choices or criticized my achievements, not because anyone made me feel small or less than. That was my own. I created it, cultivated, and owned that doubt. So where did it come from? Well, I was a lovely ballerina, but I didn't have that perfect turnout and that long, tall, willowy body that you might expect. So a seed of doubt grew. I was an outstanding student. I didn't get anything less than a B at Duke University. But I didn't have this affinity for original thought. I could follow a formula and come up with the answer, but I didn't come up with any greater insight or discovery. But I was at a pretty amazing institution surrounded by people who did just that. So another seed of doubt grew. I was an exemplary naval officer. Just read my fitness reports. I achieved everything I set out to achieve. But I didn't serve for 20 years. I didn't lead large organizations into battle. And I was surrounded by plenty of colleagues, friends, even family members who did just that, having great leadership opportunities while balancing raising a family. But I chose not to. I was a great, self-sufficient, supportive, stay-at-home mom raising 3 fantastic boys. But I didn't have a paying job for over 15 years. I didn't have the skills that would fill a resume being looked for in the current workplace. So what did I have that's worth listening to? What do I have that makes me valid in this world, in this society? Well, next step, we leave the Navy behind, right? We leave the needs of the Navy behind, we move on to this new community, and we take our 3 school-age children and we move to a new civilian community in Port Orange, Florida. Stay-at-home moms are few and far between. The typical household has 2 working parents. I'm kind of a fish out of water. So now I'm starting to question my validity. All those years of supporting and producing and achieving are kind of coming to an end. My kids don't need me 24 hours a day any longer. So what next? Does there need to be a what next? Here I am in this new community. I can't just sit still, right? I don't just sit still. I don't do that well. So I still continue to join boards, join organizations, foundations. I end up in leadership positions. But I still have that conversation casting doubt on each one of those achievements, casting doubt on whether or not I have a place in that room, whether I belong at that table, in that boardroom, with that crowd. So why do we doubt that? Maybe some of you have felt that way, insecure, feeling a little inferior, whether it's in work, at school, in a boardroom. Why do we do that to ourselves? What makes us doubt that we deserve the accolades? What makes us doubt that we don't quite make the cut? Well, here I am on this stage, learning that, proving to myself that I have something to say, that I have something worth listening to. But I didn't get up here on this stage on my own. It's taken years of friends and mentors and colleagues and family members helping me to see that I do have value, that I have something worth hearing. Even in this class, new friends who are helping and encouraging me to see that every single one of those accomplishments along the way deserves to be celebrated, not with a caveat, making it into something slightly less. So I have the voice of one particular mentor in my head and I've carried with her for years. I mentioned that I volunteered for a civic leadership organization back in Virginia in our last duty station. Well, my boss, friend, and mentor at the end of that year offered me a job. I was not looking for a job. I was not on the market for a job. But she wanted me to run a sister program in a neighboring city doing just what we'd been doing, but independently. So my first reaction to her was, oh my gosh, no. I don't have those skill sets. I can't do that. And she stopped and looked at me very quietly and very intently. Said, Kristin, you are already doing it. Your ability to stand in front of a room with poise and confidence commands attention. People listen, trust, and follow you just because you stand up and take action when needed. You are already doing it. Well, that floored me. Absolutely. And although still full of doubt, I took a leap of faith and I took that job. And I rocked it. I learned over that experience that 35 years of leading, no matter what the audience or the organization is still leading, poise and confidence have value. Standing up when needed, stepping up to help, that has value. So what does that look like in my world? Well, years of being that self-sufficient single mom almost for many years as a supportive Navy spouse and mom has taught me time management and organizational skills and definitely financial management skills. All those years of boards and PTAs has taught me group dynamics and communication. And here's my favorite. Being the sole female player agent for a year on a Little League board full of male Little League coaches taught me personality management skills. And those skills translate. Those skills translate no matter the audience or the organization. Now that voice hasn't gone away. I still have that voice in my head. So how do you keep fighting that voice? Well, I have continued to surround myself with empowering, strong people who continue to remind me every day that success doesn't look the same to everyone. Diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, all skills don't fit into the same box, and all success doesn't fit into the same box. They encourage me to understand that it's okay to set down that sense of duty. It's right to celebrate each of those accomplishments for what they were and to enjoy the fruits of my labor. So I ask you today, what have you missed out on celebrating? Who do you have in your life to help you rewire that conversation that continues to come back in your head? And what can you do when you leave here today to go out and enjoy the fruits of your labor? Thank you.